to today's edition of CovInspiration with Dayo Israel. It is so great to be with you guys today. We're starting the series on June 12, the popular June 12 in Nigeria. Guys, you need to understand, June 12 was so important in the history of our democracy that a lot of life was lost as a result of that. It's so significant because the democracy that we enjoy today was birthed as a result of June 12. But there are so many things that a lot of us here don't know about the whole June 12 issues. And so over the next couple of days, we're going to keep unraveling what really was June 12 about. What was the focus of June 12? Why did it happen that way? What was the election about? Why was the election annulled? Why was it cancelled? You know, a lot of us don't understand really what happened behind the scene at that time. And to help us dissect it today, I have with me in the studio two amazing Nigerians who were at the forefront of this challenge. First, I have here someone who is known as the Commissioner for a one-time commissioner, or two-time actually, Commissioner for Transport in Lagos. But it was more than that. It was at the forefront of June 12 as well as the state chairman. It was actually initially vice chairman and then became state chairman for the Committee for Defense of Human Rights, CDHR, and now he's a politician and a leader in Lagos State and across the country. He was Secretary of Transport in the FCT Abuja. Please welcome with me to the studio, Comrade Kayode Opeifa. Comrade Opeifa, good to see you, sir. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Dayo. I'm doing good.
How's it going, sir? It's so delighted to see your face.
To God be all the glory.
I also have with me in the studio the founder of the Moshood Abiola Vanguard for Democracy. He was also the founder of EDA, Human Environmental Development Agenda. I've known him since the late 90s when he was in the MQ Abiola movement. And it's delightful to have him on CovInspiration today, Mr. Lanre Suraj. Mr. Suraj, it's good to have you here, sir. Can you hear me, Mr. Suraj?
I think yes, I can hear you. Okay, my mic was earlier mute. Good evening, everybody. Nice to have you, and then nice having me on board.
Excellent. It's good to see everyone now, so we can all be in the conversation. So, what really is June 12 about? What was the whole craze about? Let me start from Comrade Opeifa. Comrade Opeifa, what was June 12 about?
It depends on who is talking. It also depends on the generation. For those of us who are pre the June 12 date itself, June 12 is about the enactment of democratic principles and governance in Nigeria. It's a date, is a period, is a moment that signifies the essence of the struggle before the date and subsequently after the date, and the actualization of that dream in 1998 with the death of General Sani Abacha and the reluctance of General Abdul Salam to continue to be the head of state. Rather, he called for a democratic system that eventually culminated in what we're having the past 20 years now.
Excellent. Mr. Suraj, what was the whole, not just about the date, but the whole June 12 movement? What is the historical background around it? Like Mr. Opeifa said, what led into that whole movement, the whole election and the agitation by Nigerians, and then post the election?
Thank you, Dayo, and good evening, everybody, once again. This is really quite an interesting topic for today, and I think it's also quite hard to have these in terms of bringing on board and how to switch our young people to understand when they talk about June 12. So quite a number of them would just have seen or heard about the president eventually recognizing June 12 as the Democracy Day without any clear understanding and background. And sadly enough, we don't have quite enough of theses around that can guide our young people to what actually is the whole essence of June 12. June 12 actually came in fact, for some of us in the pro-democracy movement, as more or less like a compromise for us. It was something that we really never, at the initial stage, believed in or supported. Basically, because as at that time, the man who was at the center was considered to be very close, or more or less, even by quite a number of activists as military apologists, for the fact that he's been very close to the military officials that was in government as at that time. Remember, we've had military regime for onward period of since 1984 that we had the government of Buhari back from the government of Shagari, or the civilian government at that time. Before then, we had Ibrahim Babangida, who was then playing all forms of game with the future of Nigeria, with all forms of shenanigans in terms of bringing forward different kinds of, transition to civilian regime from military regime, and the activists were consistently on the streets, agitating for the disengagement of the military and having an election that we would consider a free and fair election that would then bring about, the new democracy. We really didn't see June 12 because before June 12, there have been several other attempts by Babangida, truncated attempts, changing of the goalposts, banning of politicians. Before eventually there was the agreement that, okay, so in June 12, 1993, there was going to be election. And at that point, even those of us who did not vote, because we really don't trust the process and also the characters that were involved, were of the strong conviction at that time that if it is already taken that this is going to be the electoral process that will be adopted to give an opportunity for the disengagement of the military, then we have to support the process. So we took, very conscious interest in the process, and at the end of it, supported that electoral process to ensure that there will be no excuse for the military to continue in power. Even after that, Abiola was not seen as the best of all candidates. He was not seen as the choice and the candidate of the people in terms of activists, in terms of the progressive, but it was about the most acceptable compromise between the status quo and the civil society and also the activist community. That was how we got to June 12 election. That was how we had the election. But the attempt by the military to then also, as usual, which was not their plan, it was considered as at that time by Babangida and the others that Buhari, Abiola would not be fully supported. That at some point, there was going to be some measure of opposition, even from the public, considering that Abiola was considered to be part of the status quo. Abiola was considered to be close to the military, but unfortunately, all of them, people then decided to say, okay, if the worst of the civilian regime would be better than the best of the military regime. That was how the movement was formed around June 12. And the government was surprised that when an attempt was made at the annulment of the June 12, it was becoming very clear to them that this is going to be a kind of a mass movement, that even those people who were not part of the voting process became the vanguard of defending the mandate of the people. So the people, the 12 million Nigerians that went out to vote, were not just going there to go and plead. It wasn't just for fun. It was out of their conviction that that process was going to lead to the disengagement of the military. And for us, it was really important that not only the financial investment, the trust of the people and the confidence in that process, but needed the attention of the activists and also the leaders of the civil society movement, even some of politicians that were not too clear in support of the process, had no option than also to join the movement to call for the disengagement of the military and the respect for the outcome of that election. That was how the movement for June 12 was formed, and that was how the struggle for the revalidation of the election was sustained between 1993 and 1998.
Thank you, Mr. Suraj. Let me quickly hear. I see Mr. Opeifa, Comrade Opeifa, taking some notes while you were speaking. Do you have a feedback into that, a rebuttal of any form or a contribution to the point raised by Mr. Suraj?
How old Suraj was age of technology. But seriously speaking, this is the kind of conversation. This is the kind of conversation we need to have in this. He has given you the genesis of the whole process. I think what I just need to add is this: is that sometimes in 1988-89, we started the National Consultative Forum under the leadership of Comrade Alawa Kabashoru, now blessed memory. The attempt then was to convene Sovereign National Conference. That attempt was truncated by Babangida. So when it got to 1990, then this Committee for Defense of Human Rights was formed. Then you have this civil liberty organization under Ulisa Agbakoba, CDHR under Dr. Bekora and Somkuchi, CRP under Nwankwo, and Ozekome was heading another group. We all came together then and funded the Campaign for Democracy. The intent of the Campaign for Democracy was to kick the military out of the rulership in Nigeria. But Babangida was too smart. He formed two political parties. He added two presidential primaries. He annulled the two presidential primaries. That was one that was won by Yaradua Senior. He annulled it. Then he got to what Suraj mentioned, the Abiola versus Tofa. A lot of us then in the pro-democracy group said, no, we are not going to allow military to give us a democracy. But somewhere along the line, like you said, the civil society, the pro-democracy group, the political group, the elite, the union, especially, and it's instructive to mention NANS, National Association of Nigerian Students, NLC, Lagos State Branch. The NLC National was not fully. You have Pengasan, you have NUPEN, you have, NUJ, Lagos State Branch, you have CLO, you have CRP. They formed the Campaign for Democracy. So, and the Campaign for Democracy was in the forefront of pushing Babangida to either conduct an election or get out and do a sovereign national conference. But as God will have it, Babangida got trapped. Abiola came in with Tofa, SDP, and NRC, and as the fate will have it, election was held on June 12th. On that election day, every Nigerian went out en masse to vote, those who are qualified to vote. Then on June 23, Babangida came out to say the election had been cancelled. And that was when you now saw the civil society under the banner of Campaign for Democracy, led by Dr. Bekor and Somkuchi, who was also leading the Committee for Defense of Human Rights, now met with NADECO, National Democratic Coalition, under the leadership of the like of Chief Akinrade, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and so many of those, Okpadokun, and so many of them. And that was facilitated by members of the pro-democracy movement who have joined the political class, especially Okoyemi Bamidele and Tokunbo Afikuyome. They allowed this relationship to come, and there was then a common front. So that is the significance of June 12. At a time, June 12 represents a consensus of Nigerians to move forward, to forget about religion, forget about tribe, forget about all these other primordial issues that separate us. And Nigerian students, Nigerian workers, everybody came together and we went on the street for 30 good days, no work in Lagos and the Southwest. Nigeria was shut down, that the military must leave and they must transit. That was how the sovereign national, what do you call interim national government came in. Eventually, there was a military coup. Abacha came in and the shenanigans continued, and eventually God saved Nigeria. So the significance of June 12 is that date, June 12, represents a date. It looks like we all, Nigeria, left aside our differences and agreed that enough is enough. We must move on. And that is, I want to thank the current system for recognizing that day as a democracy day, because that would now
Comrade and Mr. Suraj, before we go further into going to the
Allow.
back, I have a question. Yes, sir. Before we go forward, before we continue backward, let me go forward a little bit. So you mentioned a lot of the people that were involved in all the democracy movement in ADECO, and many of those names are currently in the government over the last 16, 20 years. Are we better off having those leadership in government today? I just wanted to go there before we continue back on June 12th. Are we better off? Have we been better off with the activists, with people like you in the government over the last 20 years across the country? Let me start from Comrade Opeifa, then I'll go to Mr. Suraj.
I would have told Suraj, who is not in politics. But let me say this without being partial. Many of those people are not in politics. I want to tell you that. Only few of us joined. In 1999, I was not in the country in I left the country in 1997. I went to exile. Between 1998 and 1999, General Abdul Salam made efforts to get the pro-democracy movement to be involved. The likes of, I understand, that the likes of Professor Wole Soyinka was asked to come and contest election. He turned it down. Femi Falana and the rest of them, they turned it down. Bekol and some Kuti, they turned it down. Chief Gani Fawemi, however, formed his own political party from the Ghanaian Solidarity Foundation, which we formed while he was in detention. That was what transmuted to National Conscience Party. And so not many of the pro-democracy people went to government. The likes of Abdul Oro also went into politics. I think now, subsequently, in 2003, a lot of them came into politics. Like Femi Falana contested in Ekiti. He couldn't make it under the Alliance of Democracy. He left and joined the National Conscience Party. So if you think many of us are in, yes, true. But let me tell you, the political terrain is not in favor of the pro-democracy activists. The real politicians are scared. I think I'm done.
The network is so... Yeah, okay, sir. Let me hear from Mr. Suraj. Mr. Suraj, are we better off having the activists in government? Have we been better off 20 years?
Yeah, this is why it is still possible for you to have Comrade Opeifa here to discuss the importance of a day like, June 12th. This is why you still have a very few of them to still be around to hold their heads high and have any conversation around June 12th that they have not been fully sold. I mean, they've possibly not performed to the expectation of the radical left in terms of their entryism into government and into the party politics. And like I said, let me make when the whole effort about the transition from the civilian rule to military from military to civilian rule was muted in 1998 after Abacha died, there was a conscious decision on the side of the left and the conscious civil society not to participate in that process because they never trusted Abdul Salami Abubakar. That can actually be faulted by some, by quite a number of them that would want to say, oh, okay, so because you didn't participate, so go and nurse your wound. No, really, the error by quite a number of people who understand the whole process was that skepticism that was attached to the process, that effort on the side of the left actually was part of the pressure that compelled Abdul Salami Abubakar to disengage from government. The whole effort by the civil society movement and some radical left to ensure that we have a smooth sailing process of the disengagement of the military was by actually playing that role of the neutral, party to it, by only monitoring the process and safeguarding that transition process to ensure that it plays. Of course, the military was under pressure. The AD political party that eventually controlled and dominated the Southwest was more or less backed by the military. Quite a number of conditions were waived for AD to eventually emerge as a political party to contest, and that was why he was able to control the Southwest. That was why quite a number of the political parties and also politicians in the Southwest became relevant. Would I say that the political parties in the Southwest have fared enough? The answer would be no. Would I say that they've made some attempts? The answer would be yes, because the Southwest was the hotbed of the demand for the disengagement of the military. So there were quite a lot of consciousness in the Southwest. Activists were on ground. The politicians were smart, by picking some of the activists to also bring them on board, give them some political appointment. That was why Opeifa could have also been appointed as commissioner officials, because few of us were then also borrowed. And after sometimes when they are used, then they also just push them out when they become too radical for their own orientation and not practice in office. There's been some kind of shocking, involvement of the radical, movement in the political circle. But the fact is that, are we having it good? The answer is no. Are we working towards it? The answer is yes, there's some effort at getting on that. Are we learning from our experiences? The answer is yes. That is why you can see some of the level of what you have, with the recognition of the June 12th by the president, also by the ruling party. After you have seen elements and characters like, Obasanjo, who actually was the primary beneficiary of the agitation for June 12th, and for his 8 years in office till today, has never found it worthy at any time to either mention June 12th or recognize Abiola. Even when the National Assembly took a decision that the National Stadium should be named after Abiola, Obasanjo outrightly opposed that decision and ensured that that was never activated till he left office.
So this is where I am a bit confused, and we're having a conversation. I want to start from where you stopped, Mr. Suraj. From history, I learned that Obasanjo was arrested, incarcerated by Abacha. I want to believe it was because of this June 12th movement. At the same time, I read that, or I'm aware that he didn't endorse, or honor Abiola posthumously. What happened in that regard? Let me start from Comrade Opeifa. What was the issue? Was it not June 12th he was fighting for?
Dayo, you are looking for trouble. Dayo, you are looking for trouble. Now, let me start by saying that.
No, sir. I'm just trying to learn. I want to know because.
No. I'm just being sarcastic. While we were all in the pro-democracy group, fighting for the military to leave the Nigerian political space, Obasanjo was on the other side. Now, when the June 12 election was held, I want to believe he didn't believe in the Abiola's candidacy. But after the election, when everybody was struggling to find out what should be done, the information we have, and I believe it's true, is that Obasanjo was in favor of one Professor Dr. Adedeji to be the chairman of the interim national government. He actually believed, to some extent, in the annulment and having one Professor Adedeji or Dr. Adedeji of the Economic Committee of Africa or something like that to head the interim government. Eventually, it became Shonego. Now, subsequently, everybody, that's why June 12 is critical to Nigeria, and that's why it's so you now see the likes of Obasanjo, everybody now coming back together with the Ashwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's group, that is the NADECO group. Ashwaju was very prominent there. General Akinrade, General Suleiman, and so many. It was Ezeife. It was a pan-national movement. That's the NADECO. They all came together. You will also be surprised that the Committee for Defense of Human Rights remove Dr. Beko as his national president for bringing them to meet the politician. But at the end of the day, everybody worked together under the campaign of democracy and Nateko. Now, during that period, everybody was playing the game. We are all struggling to just get. Eventually, there was a military coup, and Abacha came. So everybody was struggling to get Abacha out. So we came back together again. It was in that process that Obasanjo was implicated in a coup that we believe there was never a coup. That period too, Dr. Beko and some Kuti were also in detention. Ganifa Wahimi was in detention. The secretary of the committee for the campaign for democracy, Dr. Odion Akai, now at Lasso lecturing, was also put in detention, and that was how Joe Odumaki became the secretary of the campaign for democracy. So it was when they run everybody into detention. So we have a common enemy there. That was the military and General Abacha. So that's how Obasanjo, we believe the coup does not exist. It was a phantom coup. It was framed up because the Obasanjo not being on the side of the military was dangerous for the military. So it is better to get him out. The same thing they did to Yaradua. So the retired General Yaradua too was also put in detention. So the attempt of the military, the intention there was to keep Obasanjo and some of them out so that they will not have a military opposition in the outside. So that's why I said you are looking for trouble. That's a book later.
Thank you. I think Comrade Opeifa has given a very good background, but let me re-emphasize one point that he possibly has glossed over. Actually, just like he told you, he's a politician, so there's a limit to how much. But you know, the truth is that Obasanjo was never part of June 12. Obasanjo never supported anything with June 12. Obasanjo never fought June 12 for one day, and that was why throughout his 8 years in office, he never associated with June 12, he never recognized it, and he never gave any credence to it. Obasanjo became a victim of that phantom coup, conspiracy, because of course, like you've seen with him, which is part of his own way of engaging the political system or the leadership, is the fact that he's also found, writing letters to leaders, to complain about, the style of leadership and the rest of that. As at that time, Abacha was just a no-nonsense. He doesn't care a huge about whatever it is, that who the hell you think you are, and that was why Yaradua was not died in office. And as far as he was concerned, Obasanjo was already saying nonsense. And like Opeifa said, Obasanjo was part and parcel of the whole disruption process of how June 12 was not only annulled, but how we came about the international government. So there are the political intrigues that were played behind the scene, where he also had his hand. And that is one of the things with Abacha. Once you're part of that process, he does not want to tolerate any form of betrayal. So as far as he was concerned, it was the act of betrayal. Part of the process of truncating June 12 to install the interim national government. And Abacha played everybody. Abacha was behind the scene, mobilizing a interim national government. Since he was the chief of defense staff at that time, and he only went for an official time, the action that and some others in the civil society movement went to court to challenge the interim national government, and only they had a pronouncement by the court declaring the interim national government as illegal. He took advantage of that and then pushing out Shureko and becoming the head of it, with the whole, this claiming that he was actually working towards the revalidation of June 12 and also bringing on board, Abiola as the winner of the June 12. But he knew at that time that he was playing the game. And that was the same thing that happened to Dia. Dia was part of the whole shenanigan of deceiving the people that they only struck for the purpose of actually liquidating June 12th. And it was more between, Abacha, especially the people from the southwest, to try and placate them on the ground on which people, Babaki Alhaji Lateef Jackson, they also joined that government on the assumption that Abacha was actually working towards the eradication of June 12. So Obasanjo had no business with June 12. Obasanjo just being, the ultimate beneficiary of what it never
he took advantage
about it. So for you seeing his action, even when he was immediately released from prison under Abdulsalam Abubakar, and he traveled abroad, I think to Zimbabwe, and he was interviewed by the journalist to say that there was a plan that if Abiola should die, Nigeria was going to bomb. He said Abiola is not the Messiah that Nigeria is waiting for. And as far as he was concerned, Nigeria was not going to bomb by anything. So he doesn't actually believe it. He never wanted Abiola to become the president. And that was why when he came back to Nigeria after the foreign trip, during which Abiola had died, so it was more or less like a conspiracy, that it was actually part of the whole process of that conspiracy, that Abiola was going to be killed, and that people like him would then be made, the next president, because he was already campaigning, against any collateral damage for Nigeria if Abiola should die in prison. And when he came back to Nigeria, the Mosid Abiola Vanguard for Democracy and another group held him hostage in Abiola's house. We humiliated him and was chased out of Abiola's house as the bloody hypocrite that he was. So let us not mistake history, and we should state it for the upcoming generation. Obasanjo never had any business with June 12, and it's too late for him to do that because God has brought someone else to do what he failed to do in this year.
Thank you for that clarification. I really just wanted to make a sense of a lot of things. And I think that's what this is about for a lot of young people like myself, so that, if you're celebrating the June 12th and young people who are supposed to sustain the future don't really understand the stories that happened, then you don't understand how to relate. You don't know who did what. And that's why the next point I want to go to is to have a background. What was Nadeko about? What was JACON about? What was CDHR about? What was Campaign for Democracy about? I wanted you to give us the background into all these various stakeholders that played a role in the pro-democracy movement. So I'm going to take Comrade Opeifa and come to Mr. Suraj. You can pick which one you want to analyze to tell us the history about if it was Nadeko you wanted to pick, or JACON, or CDHR, or Campaign for Democracy. What was it about? Who were the guys behind it? What role did they play in the election? What were their weaknesses? What were their achievements and successes? And just some sort of history. Because everybody hears Nadeko. But the generation that did Nadeko, they are all passing out. My generation don't know anything about Nadeko. Please help us. Comrade Opeifa.
Okay. Dayo, good question.
Yes.
Now, let's start with the CDHR. And I will add CLO to it. Civil Liberty Organization. Prior to the formation of Campaign for Democracy, around 1985, when you have Buhari changing to Babangida, what we have was CLO, Civil Liberty Organization. And I think then you have Ulisa Agbakoba, us, probably there. Then the other actors you have were Alawo Akabashoru, the father to the lady who anchors The View on TVC, Mujisola. Akabashoru was leading the National Consultative Forum. It was leading National Consultative Forum. So it was these two groups that you have then. You have not had CDHR. Then suddenly in 1988, Gani was detained. Gani Faweni was detained. Later, Femi Aborishade was detained. Then some young people, I think they were Adeniro of Kako now, and the rest, Femi Falano, now came together and said we cannot be celebrating free this, free that. So they formed Committee for Defense of Human Rights. So what the CDHR was doing, even though it has human rights, was under the funding of the NED. National Endowment for Democracy in the United States, which is being funded by the Black Caucus of the U.S. Congress. So they were pushing that we must push the military out. So while that was going on, CDHR, CLO, and CRP under Cyril Nwankwo now come together, join with Nigerian Labour Congress, Pengasa, Nupeng, National Association of Nigeria Students. Then Showore was the national president, formed what you call the Campaign for Democracy. So we now transited from individual struggle into one struggle. So under the CD, we now elected Dr. Bekor and Somkudi to lead. So Ganifa Emi Solidarity Foundation, CDHR, CLO, CRP, Nigerian Labour Congress, Nigerian Union of Journalists, and what you have mentioned is Ladi Lawal, who was then the chairman for Lagos. Also, what you have mentioned was Arogundade, Lanre Arogundade, who was leading the media right agenda. And those people came together from the CD. So CD was the one that was leading the pro-democracy movement. That was before June 12th, that the military must go. They must go. And it was CD that made Wole Soyinka not to join Social Democratic Party, that we must not participate in politics under the military. It was the CD that was asking for a sovereign national conference, which the military never allowed. But as God will have it, June 12 came. After June 12, you now have groups. After June 12 annulment on June 23, the NADECO, National Democratic Coalition, comprising of progressive politicians all over the country, north, south, east, west, came together and they aligned with the Campaign for Democracy. That is the pro-democracy movement. And the credit to that you give to the likes of Tokumbo, Afiku Yomi, and Opeyemi Bamidele, and all other pro-democracy activists who went into politics. They made the two to come together. So there was now a movement called NADECO. So NADECO was the one that was fighting until Abacha now took over. So it was when interim national government came and some members of NADECO went to take appointment. The Campaign for Democracy lost confidence in the political group. And later we had what you call JACOM. So right, we talk about JACOM. JACOM was then another form of CD because Becker was in detention, Odion was in detention, a lot of our leaders were put in detention. So that went. So I will stay with CDHR and CD Campaign for Democracy, and I've talked to you about that. Let's talk more about JACOM because by the time JACOM was in action, I was already almost out of the country.
Yeah, thanks so much. Just a little correction. When I was actually the president of University of Lagos, it was Segun Mayegun was the president of the National Association of Nigerian Students at that time. Yeah, just for in terms of going to more like when we had NADECO. NADECO was actually more still working with the civil society movement. So as at that time, we have the United Action for Democracy, UAD, that was actually led by Olisa Bakuba as well. We had the Campaign for Democracy. We have Democratic Alternative. Yeah, and we already had Ganifa Weyimi National Conscience. So the National Conscience Party of Ganifa Weyimi was actually the first party that was launched under Abacha. As at the time when Abacha said there's a ban on the political party operations in Nigeria, before the whole process that was concocted to mean the 5 leprosy finger that was the 5 finger of the leprosy hand of Ganifa Weyimi decided to translate the national conscience, which was a movement of progressives and the conscious element around Nigeria at that time. Yeah, under that national conscience, that was like a movement and also an association transmuted into a political party. It was it was at the launch of that Ganifa Weyimi was originally arrested by Abacha for actually defining, the order of the military that there should be no political party in Nigeria. And then we already had that national conscience. NADECO was more for politicians, so I can actually say that it was more for all the political elements trying to rally us around and along. So we had the ones that were still in Nigeria, and those that already absconded, to exile, and also making some efforts on exile. And we had to move beyond that political movement and also the political consideration of where, and this is where there's almost a limit that actually trust. Our politicians went to this. We saw how some of them were joining with Abacha after we've seen, some of these politicians taking up political appointments under, Abacha. Then we decided to go for the joint action of Nigeria, that we then started the process of engaging the military in more of, and I can say proudly now, confrontational resistance than just, the negotiation that needed with those by some of those apologies by some of the military officials that were also reaching out to peace. So that was with joint coalition of Nigeria, the coalition of Nigeria, through which we then engage, a broad coalition of all the civil society movement organizations and the rest of them in the country to continuously engage in civil disobedience, civil disobedience, the protest, conducting, across Nigeria, also using the UAD, with branches across Nigeria, and the whole agitation for the revalidation of June 12th at that time, and the disengagement of the military was anchored around many of these activities. Even some of our comrades in the left were not totally sold to the idea of the campaign for the revalidation of June 12th, but we were able to still unite on the ground that the military must disengage. And the only other potent alternative at that time, and the only tool which we can engage was actually for the demand for the revalidation of the June 12th. And that became the rallying point for quite a number of civil society groups. Even while and part of it was quite a number of elements in the also form part of AG, when the transition process was anchored in 1998, and became part of the politicians. Not totally all of them, quite a number of them. Also, there was still also the narrative that so coalition was anchoring at the quite a lot of movement and organizations here and there. These were prominent ones that were really
Thank you, Mr. Suraj. I think there's someone streaming behind you, so the audio is coming into your stuff. Is anybody playing the stuff live on your end? We're hearing some feedback in your audio. Okay. Quickly, let me ask, Mr. Suraj, what was your age range in that period? And Comrade Opeifa, I want to also hear that for you. Like, how old were you in those periods? And what role did you play in those periods as well? It's important. And why am I also asking that? I also wanted you to touch on Shegomayegun, Showores, and the Bamidele Opeyemis, and the Afikuyomis. How old were all of you guys? And what were the roles that you guys played in those periods? Please enlighten us. Anyone can go first.
Suraj, let me talk first. I'm older than you. Seriously speaking. Dayo, can you believe it? I was 24 years old or 23 when I joined, when we founded CDHR. By the time I was 25, I was vice chairman of Lagos State of CDHR. And the likes of Tokunbo Afikuyomi were in Unilag doing their master's degree. He was expelled around that period. And he was also on the student level. Now, the likes of Opeyemi Bamidele, we are in the same age range. Tokunbo became member House of Reps because he left us to join Baba Gana Kingibe in SDP. He became member of reps at the age of 27. He left us to go into politics. Now, around that period, Okoyemi Bamidele led NANS earlier in 1988, 89, 90, thereabout, and they had a SAP riot. And most people you call PAMSEC today in Lagos State and the rest got their job through the outcome of that. Those are part of the pro-democracy struggle before June 12. Now, by the time June 12 came, I was still under 27. I was around that age. So you can imagine we were very young. So throughout the period we fought to 1996, I became 30 years old in 1995. So you can see that we were very, very young. Then you also have the young people like Showore. Showore was, like you said, he was president, I think, Unilag. Student Union. Maegun was national NANS president. Then in Lasso was very strong. You have Tony Olusoya, who is now the deputy vice chancellor at Osun State University. Then later you have Wale Okuniyi, who is also a Pronaco chieftain. So those are all young people. You can imagine their age. Most of them are still under 55 or just about 55 to 57. Those were our age. Then you also have the younger elements who are in the Nigerian universities. Very strong pro-democracy. Then activists. Then we have the labor militants, which spreads across. Then you have the socialist movement in Nigerian universities and the polytechnic. Then I didn't mention somebody. I think we should mention it. The governor of Ekiti now, he was with Wole Soyinka in Nalekon, where they were broadcasting Radio Kuderat. That was another level. Then we didn't mention another strong fighter, Femi Falana, who was always going to court to seek releases of anybody that was arrested. And it was the link between the older generation of Alawa Kabashonu, Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti, Chief Ganifa, and our own generation. He was the link between those two generations, and that is why today he remains one of the uppermost. I'm talking more about people of our own generation rather than talking of people of the Nadeko extraction. Then you have the Joe Odumaki, Joe Oke. Oke became secretary, acting secretary of CD, and later secretary when the secretary was incarcerated with Dr. Beko, Ganifa, and the rest on a phantom coup. That was Odion Akaye, who is now lecturing at the last week. Then you have somebody we should also not forget. That's Kayode Oladele, a former member of the Lagos Federal House of Reps, representing Yewa North, who also relocated to the US and fought a case in the US under the pro-democracy and Adeco movement to ensure that Nigerian head of states are liable for court action in the United States. He won the case in the district court of Detroit. So there are so many. Then you have Ladi Lawal is no more. It's like all these people, believe me, I doubt if any one of us was above 35 years old. Majority of us were below 30.
Yeah, I think at that time, Comrade Opeifa has already mentioned those who are that time were more or less like the older kiddas, you know. I mean, they're in between some of us who were just like attaining our age of 20, or were even below the age of 20. And I can tell you, Showore and myself, who is also of labor, Adeola Toeton, yes, was a little bit older, who was the president of Anthony Fasio, Diamond and were all like in our ages of, you know, between range, I can tell you, between the age of 19 and 20, were the time that we were actually at the forefront of also dealing with some of them, more or less like that. So while the Opeifas and the rest of them will be speaking grammar and the English, they're always the ones actually actually make the street ungovernable many times for the military and the police. And these were the peak of the sacrifices. I mean, as at that time, we were engaging the military as if we're not interested in living till tomorrow. I mean, it was more like you were just so daring and that of the system, and we take it more like a job. So it wasn't like we were looking for any job. We weren't really bothered about getting a job. We weren't even interested in traveling abroad. All we wanted to do was as a declaration of action, where the foot soldiers that are always there to ensure that the actions are enforced. And we know our strategic point. So I can tell you, for me to discuss the whole of Lagos State today, I don't need to pull actions in more than 2 places. And I put those actions, and I can tell you, you can feel the impact in the whole of Lagos State for the next 2-3 days. So that is how much of the training that we got at that time. That was how much that we were deeply involved. And in terms of the age, like I said earlier, we have a retinue of quite a number of the young people that are still around, across the federation, that were putting actions. The like of I saw that my friend and comrade as well, Kayode Opeifa, is also listed as one of. I mean, these were even guys who were of Yoruba extraction, but were actually acting, fighting as far as in.
Suraj, don't forget Chima. Don't forget Chima Obani.
I mean, looking at quite a lot. Yeah, the Imaize Azu, Chima Obani, even Maodi, any of the current
Comfort, the wife to GT.
Yeah, I mean, both husband and wife, GT and Comfort. These were actually activists and guys who were in their prime age. These were at the point when we were about getting married, getting a house, getting a car. But no, it was actually dedication to the Nigerian project, and we were seeing it part of our life as the only commitment that we could actually do to things. When you see now, so I tell you, I can, as a student union president in Yabatek, I can afford to tell you, I'm going for a meeting in Maiduguri with just 10 naira in my pocket, with just a hot box. And all I needed is the moment I leave Yaba, I can get to Unilag. And from Unilag, we get to about 5 or 6 of us up to UI. From UI, we will get to, it is not just about also the fact that there was a camaraderie between us. It is the fact as a decoy, also escaping from the security eyes. Because for each of those meetings, the police monitoring each and every one of us. So we get to UI, from UI we get to Akure, from Akure we get to Kogi, from Kogi then it can be sometimes we are mixed with pepper in those trucks, to actually decide out of to and have our meetings in the middle of the night, in the dead middle of the night. One thing that we sure is that we would really have that. So when you see the 401 of NAN's president with a Mercedes Benz, with a Lexus Jeep, that actually is not the tradition of NAN's. That wasn't the NAN's that we led. That wasn't the NAN's that we did to fight for.
If I can comment on that point, Mr. Suraj, let me quickly comment on that point. That was where I was going to. Do you think that the youth of today, the youth of my generation, are ready and are willing to pay the price that you guys paid to defend the democracy that we enjoy today? I know that I'm sharing the honestness because I know Comrade Opeifa is going to come for us and say we are not too young to run or not too old to run. But it would be nice to hear your thought. Do you think that the youth of today?
No, I would have to be candid and I have to be frank with you. I think part of the problem that we suffered, and I've just said this to some of our senior comrades on Saturday. I think some of us actually quickly got frustrated with the system and abandoned it to actually suffered the level of decay that we currently have. It was quite unfortunate. I can say that you guys are not really ready to actually take over leadership. What you have been doing, you're not too young to run. And I can tell you that for free, is that quite a number of you have actually ended up shooting yourself on the foot, because what you end up having is that you will have the not too young in the family of the elites, the not too young in the family of the politicians, the not too young in the family of the rich, taking advantage of that, and it will not come to an average activist, an average conscious person. And I will tell you a typical example. So you've seen what you suffered in Lagos State, aspiring to be a House of Assembly member. They are not looking for the politicians, and it is across both political parties. And I would want to say that even APC is worst when it comes to that. Is the fact that they don't have rooms for conscious elements to actually take over the reign of leadership. They only want people who are of psychophantic. They want people who are more of just apologists to the Godfather. They want people who are not even competent. They want people who are not grassroots. They who are not connected. So it is not too young to run. It is just typically like harming this guy, to actually take over some of the things that you should have benefited from. And it is not about too young to actually occupy offices. It's about actually not too young to take responsibilities.
Yeah. Let me retrace that, please. Beyond looking at the government, in the sense of, do you think we ourselves, do you think that we're ready, or our society made it worse for the youth today? In your own days, you come out of university and there's a car waiting for you. There's job waiting for you.
That's not correct.
No, that was what we hear. You get
I left university first degree in 1986, and my colleagues and I said we were jobless in 1990 until the SAP riot of 1989-90. So then only when you make second class upper and first class, you can be rest assured during our own time. But prior to our time, it could be so. Now, let me tell you why you guys should be very grateful to God. Our own generation, we never saw democracy more than 5 years. At the age of 1979 to 1983, 84, that was all we saw. So when the military came, we were bitter to fight them out. So we spent our energy. Then the Suraj generation came, followed suit. So that is the duty of June 12. So what June 12 has done, June 12 has made the opportunity for your own generation to contest election at your prime. In our own prime, the military were there. They wouldn't allow us. So it was the likes of Jack Conde or Shoba. They left and they came back. They left and they came back in 1990. They came back again in 1997.
In your prime, Afikuyomi went to House of Reps.
No.
In your prime, Tinubu was
that's what I will explain it. Afikuyomi broke the ranks. Opeyemi broke the ranks. We said none of our own pro-democracy group should join politics under military. Good luck for them. They went, they became. Those people who ran election then were not the activists of our side. So let's.
Yeah, but it's a generation. It's a generation.
Dayo, let me explain. They were able to win election because they belong to our side. That was what gave them the advantage. Now, after that, the period was truncated after 2 years again. So Tokumba could not progress. Opeyemi could not progress. Oladile could not progress. Aregbesola also, who joined them, could not progress. So by the time we came back, they all went into exile. Their primate, Aregbesola, was devastated. Opeyemi went to United States. Tokumba was somewhere in US and UK. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the age of 38 years became a senator. He was sent out of the country. He went into exile. So our generation never had the opportunity to experience democratic system the way it should. But what did our generation do? We fought, and June 12 came up. And we also fought after June 12 election of 1993 for another 4 or 5 years for democracy to fully come in 1999. So the significance of June 12 is to every generation. For our generation, our struggle became rewarded. For the younger generation, they had opportunity for an uninterrupted democratic system. For the older generations, from Asiwaju, 38 years old, 40 years old and above, they had opportunity to come and complete their tenure. So when you talk of not too young to run, I always tell you there's also not too old to run, because some people were never allowed to run. This is the time for them. So it is not about age. But as we go on, the younger generation will continue to become the governors, like Donald Duke, who was governor, I think, 38, Fashola, 44, somebody else was 42. Speaker of the House of Reps was 29, 30. He was removed because he was not 30. That was, I think, Buhari something, 30, or Jimeji was 30 something after.
Buhari.
So
no, he was removed from all certificates.
He became the Speaker of the House of Reps at the age of 30 or 29. So our generation created that opportunity. Now the best thing for us is that June 12th is the greatest thing to have happened to Nigeria. It allowed us the opportunity to unite all different forces, age, religion, sex, character, or whatever. We all came together and we agreed that rain or sunshine, somebody will become our president. We voted Abiola. Abiola won 25% in every state in Nigeria except Sokoto and Kefi or Zamfara, 2 states that made Sokoto then. Abiola defeated Tofa even in Kano, where Tofa came from. The eastern part of Nigeria, with the like of Nwanyanwu and the rest of them, Abiola went there and defeated Tofa. Tofa also made a good stride. He made 25% in a number of states. So it is not that Yoruba people did not vote for Tofa or they voted. No, Yoruba people voted Tofa. He made his 25%. So it was an opportunity for us, even under a military system. We took advantage of the moment. Then when we were denied the moment on June 23, we went mad. And we went onto the streets, especially in the Southwest. You have the likes of Colonel Omar. You have the likes of Colonel, so many of them, I can't remember their name. You have the likes of Ezeife from the East, Undubuisi Kanu, and so many of them have already came together. We brought about the struggle for June 12 actualization, and it was eventually actualized partially on the day Abacha died. Because it was the June 12 struggle that scared Abdul Salam in the face. If Abdul Salam had stayed, we would have removed him by mass protest. So Abdul Salam knew he was not going to survive. The June 12 coalition movement has waxed strong. Jalikon, Nalikon, Nadeko, CD, UADDA, NANS, and more importantly, Nigerian Bar Association. Everybody stood solidly for democratic principle. So Abubakar cannot afford Ikebri. Then we must also commend one man who is not in Nigeria, Mandela. When June 12 was announced, Mandela left South Africa for 30 good days. Can you imagine the president out of the States? He traveled around the whole world, pleading for Nigeria, pleading for the Western country.
Wow. I have never heard that story before. And that's the whole idea of what this conversation is about. So I don't think a lot of people in my generation. I've never heard that story before. Tell us about that, sir. Mandela left South Africa for 30 days because of June 12.
Yeah, I think Suraj.
I said I've never heard the story, the Mandela angle.
Suraj. Oh, Suraj is gone. Yeah. Suraj.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what Mandela did. Mandela just, Nigeria was at the forefront of independence for South Africa. So when the June 12 election was announced, Mandela left the African country, African nation. He went to President Bill Clinton. He went to Margaret Thatcher. I think it was Margaret Thatcher that was there. He went at almost 30 days. He was moving around the world on behalf of Nigeria. Do you know that General Obasanjo, a former president, almost became UN Secretary General? The June 12 movement in Nigeria, we mobilized, wrote petition, and we make sure he never became United Nations Secretary General. That is to tell you the battle of that movement. So I'm saying this for the younger generation. And those who thought June 12 was about Nadeko and the politician. No, it was beyond the Nadeko. But Nadeko was at the RON. It was Nadeko, Nigerian students, the Nigerian labor movement, the Nigerian Bar Association, the peasants, the Penkasan, the workers. Everybody were on the same page. But the military was too powerful. But we gave it to them, and eventually they bowed. And that is the significance of June 12. A people's focus, a people's movement can never be suppressed by the bullets. It can never be suppressed by inferior arguments or inferior people. And that is why it took only between, even though the struggle started around 1980, 86, 87, 88, by the time the election ended in 1993, it took us only 5 years to get the military out. In other countries, it could be more than that. And we must give credit to all those heroes of that period. So let me mention G.T. Oguye and wife, Comfort, who was then who later became Nan's president. You have Bruno, who was last student union president, I think 1993, 94 or so, who is now, I think it's Suraj. You also have the likes of
Bruno is at Aribabu now, if I'm right.
Yeah. And guess what? Guess what? We were all fighting for June 12, and he was my student at last, because then I was lecturer. So there was no difference between lecturer and so I didn't mention Asu. Asu was superb. Yayi, Jega, the Jega who became INEC. We were all in the struggle together. Then you have the likes in the north of Labaran Maku, who was former minister for information under Jonathan. Then you have the likes of Ekura. Then you have the likes of Mahmoud Black from ABU. Is it Suraj, you know them. So many people like
so
that.
What role did Maku play? Because it sounded as if June 12 was a Southwest agenda, it was a Southwest movement and all of that. I'm hearing a lot of names of Southeast, the Chima Obanis, of course, I knew him back in those days.
Suraj
and the others.
Suraj, you speak to that.
No, I mean, there are quite a number of non-Yorubas. The epicenter of most of the activities were actually the Southwest and especially Lagos. Lagos, Oyo, Osun, sometimes very few times in Ogun State, but the epicenter of the whole activities was. But you have a mixed basket of very conscious young people from all walks of life, all parts of the country. And like I said, in terms of association, yeah, you have very conscious some of the leadership, and that was why the military targeted the MBA, the NLC, the NUPENG, and also the NUG for some form of infiltration and attack. But really, those were actually organizations that stood firmly in support of the actual and the manufacture of these jobs. And I think prominently was what Franco as the Secretary General of the bank, as the President of the bank, actually shut down the country, and that was unprecedented before Kokori actually did it, and that was almost going to bring down the military, and that was why it was equally treated with that level of attention. There are quite a lot of people that we can't mention their names here. The Labaran Maku that he mentioned, these are,
Labaran Maku was PRO Nance at a point.
It was actually was it vice president of Nance or
no, it was
something? It was something like that.
It was PRO. I was to contest against him.
Quite a number of our colleagues from the northern part, Nasiru Kura that he mentioned was also a Nance president at some point. Mahmoud was the Nance president. Lanre Arugunadi was a Nance president at some point in time.
Lanre was 83, 84.
Later generation. These are guys who would have to go on. It is not at work that people go on sabbatical. They go on sabbatical as a student, suspend their studentship for a year to go and actually dedicate the period.
In fact, Suraj, the ABU was very strong in the fight.
Strong.
And BUK.
It was competition between the campuses. You would have in football, you would have in UN, you would have in ABU, you would have in IFE, you would have in UI, you have in. So it is always like, and these are not all Southwest students. These are students from all parts of the country who are embarking and staying in this. Quite a number of activists were suspended. So it wasn't just like as rosy as we were mentioning it. I mean, I was suspended, rusticated for 1 year.
But like COVID-19, were you rusticated?
Oh yes, for a whole year. It was that forced me back on campus. I was equally eventually arrested with myself and Chure and a host of others, and detained by by Abacha. We were lucky that it was the chambers of Dr. Francis Abayomi with with Dr. Abiola Akere Afolabi, who was former PRO of Ife. That was our lawyer that actually eventually rescued us, from being transferred to Abuja. It was planned by Abacha.
Are you aware Tokunbo too was rusticated for 1 year? Apikuyomi?
Yeah,
that was
just
what took Tokunbo into politics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All on June 12th. These were pre-June 12 issues.
When some of these were. So, I mean, many people, the whole.
So the Nigerian student movement were fighting the military to leave.
Did not start in June 12. It was just, we just used at a point June 12 as a running factor, but it actually didn't start with June 12. These were things that actually started pre-June 12. From the
to
day
say that the military must leave, they must not conduct election, they must hand over to an interim government, and civilians must draft the constitution. These were led mainly by the labor movement and the Nigerian students and the pro-democracy group. It was when the politics now came that we now say, okay, we will support this election. You must leave. Wole Soyinka left as a chairman of FRSC in 1991, January 1. He gave Babangida, or was it Abacha? He gave Babangida a condition. You say you will leave. If you don't leave by December 31, I think it was 1990 or 1991 that he would retire. When Babangida did not conduct election, Wole Soyinka resigned as the chairman of FRSC.
Wow. I think it's a good place to my next point. My next point is actually about sacrifice.
June 12. Eventually,
I thought you said you were going to have it for 1 hour.
Yeah, and that was.
I know, but the conversation, I'm going to wrap up now. 2 points I want to close with. There's a lot. Uncle Shola Adui just said fantastic recount of history. 2 points I want to wrap up with before I let you go is first, what were some of the sacrifices that was made in those periods? You talked about Wole Soyinka resigning. You talked about going on sabbatical. What were the kind of sacrifices that was made in those periods that you individuals that you can mention? Because today when we see all these guys in places, when they see Asiwaju, glorified by God, when you see other people who are in the process, who are blessed one way or the other, we don't understand the sacrifices that they have made in those periods. So if you understand the sacrifice of some of your colleagues and yourself, then I want you to answer one final question. Do you blame Shagari for everything that happened? If Shagari had been perfect, do you think that Buhari would have come in? And do you think that Babangida would have come in that led to that? So let's take that.
Let me just tell you what did we sacrifice. Before we say that, let me recognize Ojudu. Babafemi Ojudu and his team at a Tempo and Tel. Those guys were fantastic from the media side. They are part of the Lagos NUJ that kept firing through one evening paper called Tempo. Now, let's go to what did we sacrifice. We didn't have opportunity to move around with ladies. We couldn't make money. We were busy. There was a time we married late. Many of us married late because we spent most of our struggle on the road, on the street, fighting the military. Then when June 12 came, nobody would marry us. No girl would move out with us because they're afraid we could be arrested. So we were always on the run. I was lucky I was never but I had to jump a 2-story building or 1-story building one time in Ikeja when we were on our way to meet Otedola to protest. I was drenched in liquid tear gas. Shino Loremiko and Debo Adeno were arrested. So no lady will go out with us. They say we are not going to agree. So we suffered while our colleagues were making money. While they were in the school doing their PhD, we were busy on the street fighting for the freedom of Nigeria from the shackles of the military dictatorship. The same thing to the likes of Gani Fawemi. He spent all his money, a bunch of his money, doing pro bono cases. Solani died. After being tear gas at one of the heroes, the sacrifices of our heroes past was never in vain. The actualization of it by the resignation of Abdul Salam, the actualization of June 12 by the election of 1999 and the success of democracy to today, the actualization of June 12 as a democracy day itself by President Muhammadu Buhari, and the next actualization of June 12 when Abiola will be declared the winner one day, very soon. we make and complete the whole struggle. So the lesson for us, those who are fanning the embers of war, ethnic politics, nepotic politics, religious politics, all these groups just talking about, I think they need to relax. Let's go back to what we did on that day. That day proved to us as a Nigerian, we can come together and forget whatever we must have lost. I will never speak about the other side. You ask for whether Shagari or not. That's for the past. The actual thing is that the military, if they had not come, we could have been better. They truncated that regime. After that 1983, 84, 83 election, Shagari would have spent the 4 years, just like the PDP government spent 16 years. Whatever number of years the MPN government spent, there would have been realignment and the rest. There was already a progressive alliance between the Southwest and the Northeast. There was alliance between the East and the Northwest. So Nigeria was making progress, whichever way you think about it. So the coup of 1983 was unnecessary. That was the coup that drew our education backward. I was in the university. We were having a 50 kobo meal. My bed space was always cleaned for me by cleaners. Every 2 weeks, they give me new bed sheet. They give me tissue, toilet rolls to use. Like everything I needed were available. We don't pay school fees. It was that coup that introduced school fees in Nigeria. It was when Buhari was removed that Babangida devalued the naira. When I was in the university, early in my day, it was 2 to 1. It was 1 naira to $2 in 1983. And until Buhari left, no IMF came in, and so many things. The civilian government will have stabilized the country, regardless of whatever, because we have every 4 years the opportunity for an election. And that is what we have done this time, 20 years. I think we must thank all those who fought either from the political end, the civil society and the Nigerian students, and we must not forget those who died. A lot of people that I saw death. I saw bullets bringing down people at Uteleba. I saw it.
Wow.
I saw it.
Wow.
Bullet bringing down people at, I see how people who go to it. The guy has no leg again. We have people whose private parts were destroyed by bullets. We have a lot of Nigerians who died, and we had a lot of Nigerians who died. Then we must not forget Yamogaji. That is another angle on their own. The market women, they moved from Lagos and all over Nigeria to Abuja naked, led by Yamogaji of Lagos.
Wow.
So we must not forget them to Nigerian market women who also fought, and we must not forget the military men who supported the struggle too. A lot of them, Colonel Ajani, is now late. They were all brought up into the Phantom coup, and let me stop here, man.
Mr. Suraj, your turn.
Yeah, I think the sacrifices were enormous, just like Comrade Opeifa said. I mean, sometimes some of them would also bring tears to your eyes. Remembering what we did at that time. I mean, that was why I said we actually were more or less facing death. I mean, the sad aspect of it is you have some of your peers, contemporaries that you were in school, would also write you off as not to do well, and they would even confront you and say, "Why would you want to waste your life? Why are you not like doing? Or who are you trying to impress?" And that was the point. At the time, we were actually getting involved in some of these things. I mean, every other thing, marriage, child, house, cars, were just nothing that for us as a consideration. We don't even see it as an achievement to actually get over. And we knew that these were sacrifices because we would have our colleagues on daily basis who would get to meet and they tell you, "Oh, now I work with GT Bank." I mean, immediately you would know that these are guys that academically you are better than. And now he's telling you he works with GT Bank. "Oh, now I'm working with NNPC. Oh, now I'm working with any of these high-flying, jobs around." But you are like on daily basis, just living. I mean, for more than a year, Showore and I were hibernating in a school called School of Radiography, somewhere around Yaba, and this is where we had to hide on daily basis because we were by the military. Yeah.
Suraj, we should not forget that Showore was injected with poison during this.
Oh yes, it was as part of the involvement in the activism and also the radical union that he led in Unilag, he was injected with a legal weapon led by some of the cultists on campus who were actually
sponsored by
the
government
military authority, to actually do this. I mean, these are the kind of things that we face. I mean, like he said, I mean, I had my first child at the age of 33, so you can imagine what that would mean. And quite a number of my other colleagues even had their children at a later age, than mine. We decided to get any form of paid job not until after we had, the transition to civilian rule, and we had some modicum sanity around the system. But for the whole period, at our youthful age, we were actually just committed to the transformation of Nigeria and also the disengagement of the military. We saw the disengagement of the military as a project that must be achieved, and every other person that contributed, either under the union or under individual contribution, under the civil society movement, it was a project for the country. And every sacrifices would have to be made. You will only go out in the morning knowing you are going out. You are not sure you are going to come back in the night, because it's always just about the hunt by the military. So it wasn't just now that you'll be running from the police. So there was the DMI, there was the military itself, there was the SSS, there was the police, and you have already all of them hunting for one and every of us. So at any time,
Dayo, before you close, let me add this.
Like an imam, and to move from one point to the other, and sometimes you have to pretend and act like a madman, like an insane, because you need to go through the middle of the whatever. You guys like a madman, remove your shirt and you start just rolling it and speaking to yourself in the middle of the road because you want to decide and beat the check and the rest of that. So I mean, when you're talking about sacrifices, those are the period when people were making sacrifices for the country.
Dayo, let me just quickly say this. Do you know at the
Comrade Opeifa, you were going to talk about, you were going to answer that.
Ashwaju left this country. He left his wife behind. He eventually found his way to either Chicago or London. At a point, Ashwaju was living in London, the wife was living in Chicago. For the period the wife was in Nigeria before she could get out, the woman was alone under trauma. When I left Nigeria, with my son, who was then, I think it was 3 months or 6 months, I was told I cannot pass through the airport. My name was on the list of those who cannot travel out of Nigeria. But luckily, they spelled my name as OKP. So I used some military connection of our groups. I passed through the airport. Do you know that my father almost disowned me? The day he got to take over my apartment at Tejosho and found a lot of literature of the pro-democracy movement in my house. It was in my house that the Ghanaian newspaper, law firm, Nigerian law reform, we would bring all the material.
Human rights law reports.
No, Nigerian law reports. So he would dump it in my house. Shima Obani will leave from Nigerian Labour Congress. These guys will carry the posters to Ojuelegba. From Ojuelegba to Ejiro to Mushi on our foot. Mushi to Ikeja to Alawusa. By the time I was leaving my house, the kitchen was filled with posters, incriminating documents. If they find it in my house, I'm going to jail for life. So that Odion was detained at his prime age. The fiancé could have gone. He came back, luckily he met the fiancé. That is the life we all lived. So I think we thank God. We are better for it.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
I know, Comrade Kayode Opeifa, Mr. Lanre, Suraj. This has been fantastic. We're very grateful for your time. The conversation has been amazing. We have learned a lot. We've learned my notes is full, and I have a lot of questions for the other guests that are coming behind. By the grace of God, I'm sure that personally I would also get some more clarification from you.
Worry. By the time you meet with Olisa, Mrs. Obi and the rest, they will give you all the other information you need.
Absolutely. It's been great talking to you. I want to say a big thank you to Comrade Kayode Opeifa and Mr. Lanre Suraj for your time and for your insight. May God continue to protect you and keep you. He has kept you from all the dangers of June 12th, so we have no doubt he will keep you beyond. Thank you so much, sir, and God bless you real good. Have a great, and to
Thank
all
you.
our viewers, thank you so much. We're going to be here 5 o'clock with the Deputy Governor of Lagos and 6 o'clock with Dr. Afsat Abiola to share our own experience having lost our parent June 12th. Thank you so much, and God bless you, everyone.